Hey men of Sandals Church, welcome to Season 7 of the Men's Advance. We are talking about the role models that we have in our life. What does discipleship look like? What's the legacy that we're leaving for others? And what do we need to encourage us as men to continue pressing forward to make sure that we leave behind the church in a good place, our kids in a good place, the world in a good place? We're excited for you to enter into this next season with us as we discuss these things. We're inviting you into our actual conversation about this, and we hope that you will have these same conversations with your group, with your friends, and with those around you. So welcome to Season 7 of the Men's Advance. God, we thank you for this time together as men. Pray that you would encourage us through our time together, help us to share honestly, and help us to grow in our faith together. Thank you for this food. Bless it to us, and may we be an encouragement to one another. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. 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 So, I wanted to share with you guys something I read this week from 1 Chronicles chapter 28 and 29. It's kind of a sort of an epic picture. I viewed it as a scene as I was reading it, and it's David passing the kingdom to Solomon, and so he gathers all the leadership, all the elders, all the big people in Israel into this probably feast. And he's talking to his son Solomon. And so I'm just going to read a couple verses because it just hit me. I was like, man, this is perfect for us as dudes to talk about. It says, Solomon, my son, know the God of your father and serve him with a whole heart and a willing mind. For the Lord searches all hearts and understands every plan and thought. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will cast you off forever. Be careful now, for the Lord has chosen you to build a house for the sanctuary. Be strong and do it. And I was like, man, that's such a great charge. So you've got Solomon, this young leader who's being charged to build the temple because David can't do it because he shed too much blood. And so God said, nope, your son's going to do it. And he's got this massive task ahead of him, and so he's in front of all these people. Imagine being 21 years old or something in front of all these leaders, and you're like, you got to build this temple. And then he kind of lays out hey, don't worry, I've made some provisions for you. I've been working to prepare you for this time. I've been storing up gold, storing up all these different things that you're going to need for it. And then he says to him again, be strong and courageous and do it. Do not be afraid and do not be dismayed. And then a little further down, he says, and with you in the work will be every willing man who has any skill for any kind of service. Yeah. And so he's basically kind of challenging all the dudes, anybody who has skill, which is everybody, and anybody who's willing, which is anybody who's willing, is going to be with you to do this work. So, hey, don't worry, I provided all this stuff, and I provided all these men to do the work. And then he kind of challenges everybody else and says, who then will offer willingly, consecrating himself today to the Lord? He's challenging all the leadership. And then he challenged them to basically give of their wealth, of what they've accumulated to this project. And it says, the people rejoiced because they had given willingly with a whole heart. They had offered freely to the Lord. And David the king also rejoiced. So I just thought it was this great picture. I think about us gathering as men and, the men of the church at large, us sitting down and going, what can we do? What if we bring all our resources together, all our wisdom, all our wealth together, what might we be able to accomplish? And thinking about just the emotion even for David passing the mantle to his son Solomon in front of this huge crowd, and thinking about how important it is for us as men to think about what our legacy is, to think about what are we passing on to our sons. You don't have a son yet, but the rest of us do. You probably got one in your loins somewhere, being ready. And
gird him up.
Gird him up.
Down there in the Lord.
But someday, maybe, in either way, we have sons in the faith, right? Men that are younger than us, that we're passing the same legacy on to. It's not just our boys that we do. It's the men of the church, and how important that is. And so I just wanted us to each kind of share what is it that we want to pass on. As I've been thinking about this for my son Kingston, man, I have so many hopes for him, and I'll probably get a little emotional just thinking about it. Man, I just want him to love God. I want him to to know Jesus. I want him to avoid the pain of the world as much as possible, to set this course for him where he's going to mess up, he's going to sin, but that he doesn't have to destroy too much of his life before he realizes how much he needs Jesus. I want to teach him that. I want to teach him to love God, to love his family, love his wife, love his kids. I hope that I get to demonstrate that to him in some way. I want to teach him to work hard, to provide, but also to work hard for the church, to use his gifts and talents. He doesn't need to be a pastor like me. That's not better or more important, but I want him to, just whatever God gives him, that he uses it, to build God's church. I want him to just be a humble man who is respectful. And I think the same thing I love mentoring younger guys and just teaching them to trust God. There's so many things in life that throw us curveballs, and what it teaches us is trust. Even in losing my younger son this past year, to trust God, even when everything hurts, even when the worst possible thing happens to you, that God's still trustworthy, he's still faithful, and everything doesn't have to go right for us to believe in God and follow him. And my hope is that Kingston will continue in faith regardless of what comes. That he'll continue to be loyal to God, loyal to his family, loyal to his church. And so that's kind of what I've been processing.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure.
I did probably the classic over prepping for this part because I knew it was coming. But I started writing down, man, what are the things that I really want to invest in and build into my kids and have been doing. And I got a list of like 10 or so. And we all, dozens of times a day, we're teaching them lessons about different things. And then I started thinking, maybe I should ask them, what has been a lesson? Like when you think about things that I've taught you or I've poured into you, what comes to your mind? What have you learned from me? And then so it was cool. I let them speak into that. And then I kind of matched it with a few of the ones that I had written down. So and I do that not to brag on me, but to be an encouragement to everyone that even though it's hard work, whether it's your child or someone you're mentoring and discipling, investing in, but that hard work is worth it and it pays off even when it seems like it might not. So the first thing I wrote, and this is way more eloquent than I would say it if I was not reading this because I wrote it down, so I'm more eloquent.
Thank you for being honest.
Yeah, for sure. But I said, I want them to know that God's love for them is irrevocable and unrelenting, that it never changes, and that it's always pursuing them, right? Like a wild river that's just flowing that you can't get away from. That's God's love. And my son, Mehdi, who's 14, he said, you've taught me God loves me no matter what I do, and my mistakes don't define who I am. And man, if Mehdi could just walk away with that, that's huge. The other thing I said that I really want my kids to grow in, that I want to teach them, is that the appropriate response to God's love is to receive it and release it. That we bathe in it, that we drink it in, that we let it saturate our souls, and then we release it to others, which really is the great commandment, right? Love God, love people. And my daughter Addison, who's 14, said, "You and Mom have taught me I am truly loved, like for real loved. So many people don't know what that kind of love is, or want to know what that kind of love is, but don't." And then the last one was, I've said this, especially to my son Elijah, for years. Over and over I say this to my kids: you are right now becoming who you will one day be. The choices that you're making right now are going to determine the person you are, right? Your decisions, you're on a path and it leads somewhere. And Elijah wrote, "You've taught me that decisions I make now impact my future, and that my friends will make or break me." And I'll tell you, one of the things I want to continue to invest in them is the desire for them and the realization for them to want to invest in others, right? To take all this that you've been given now and turn around and make disciples, impart it to other people. So those were three of the things that really I want to pour into my kids and to other people, that I mentor.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
It's awesome. I had a few things. The one major thing that I think is faith, that they see my faith in Jesus and be able to hold on to that. And because I believe, with my whole heart. And I want them to believe with their whole heart and to reap the benefits of that, just from tithing to trusting God in, bad situations. They've been able to see me go through that, and just to love genuinely, and to be the truest version of themselves that God has called them to be, to use all their gifts and to serve others. That's what I would like for them. And then as I was thinking about this, I just had a birthday a couple of weeks ago, and they gave me a card. And so the unsolicited answer, of what they see in you tells the real story. And so as I'm reading the card, my daughter says that, "Dad, you're an inspiration." And I was like, wow, because she's my aide in first period. So she watches me teach. And she says, "I watched you. Now, except for your dancing, if you and I'm like, "Girl, I gave you those moves. Hold on, don't hate, because they was in." She said, "Except for that, everything else, you're an inspiration when you teach, and I watch you teach and do these things." And I'm like, "Love that." Okay, And then my son, he plays basketball, he does volleyball, he does track, he does everything. But in his note, he said, "Dad, thank you for being a supportive father." And I didn't have that growing up. My parents didn't come to any game. And I tried to make sure that my kids would have what I didn't have. And for that to come across in the birthday card, I was just like, wow. It touched my heart. I was like, man, they're getting what I want them to give. What I want them to get and what I want to leave for them. Because I was at a yard sale, and I'm looking at comics. I like to read comic books. And I'm looking through the comics and, checking them all out. And then we get in the car, and I bought a few of them. And my wife was like, "Man, you're leaving all this stuff for the kids. You're leaving your comic book collection. You're leaving you got 3 keyboards.
You got too much stuff."
and I thought, man, that's just stuff. They don't read comics like I do. I tried to get them to play the keyboard since they were little. They won't pick up an instrument. We got a drum set and keyboards. I'm like, somebody, do I have to die for y'all to want to learn for you to want to learn how to do it? But I'm like, I'm thinking that's just stuff. And then I read that card and I'm like, that's what I want to leave for them. Something they, it's not physical. It's something they can take with them, something they can hold in their hearts and say, "Dad was this type of man. Dad was a hard worker. Dad loved. Dad was a protector." Those are the things I want to leave for my kids. So the physical stuff, if you guys want some comics, some keyboards, we might have to talk after this, because my kids aren't trying to, do that yet.
Love that.
But
Yeah, we could talk after this.
Yeah, Adam, when I think, you're not Adam. Andrew, when I think about your question, Andrew, there's a humbling component to it for me, about the kind of legacy I'm going to leave, because there's aspects that like I can teach my kids, right? Like what I've taught them, and then I feel like there's things that like they just kind of catch, like there's things that are taught, and then there's things that are caught. And when I think about what I hope my kids catch, there's kind of 2 words that come to mind. The first would be compassion. Paul talks about having all of the incredible Christian traits, but without love, like you're just noise, And I think about the world we live in now is a very noisy world. And I think about the world that they're going to be stepping into as they grow. Like I hope with compassion, with a love, that they both experience from God and give to others can lead to a life of compassion, Jesus, as he's teaching his disciples about life after him, he has that teaching where he says things will get so difficult, many people will leave, and the love of men and women will grow cold, And I just think about, man, if I can leave them the ability and kind of cultivate a life of compassion, I feel like that can leave like such a pathway forward in what following Jesus looks like. And then I also think about courage too, like the ability to stand firm with Jesus, when everything kind of is shifting, We're all having to deal with that question ourselves, what does it look like for us to stand firm with Jesus now? I think as our kids get older, as my kids get older, they're really young right now, there'll be different issues that will sway them, And so I think about how do I cultivate courage in them so that they might continue to stand with Jesus as there's these massive shifts, culturally, socially, whatever pressures come, whatever pain comes that life brings them, what does it look like to still hold enough courage to be able to stand with Jesus? And so, I just think about compassion and courage and teaching those. A word I use a lot with my kids is practice. I'm constantly saying practice. Like, let's practice honesty. Like, let's practice listening. Because I think, like you said, Adam, like the decisions, the habits we're doing now are like forming us into our future, And so anytime I'm having like a corrective conversation or we're celebrating something, I always use the word practice. Like, we practice this, or I love that you practice this, because, I think it's one thing for them to know the principle, the truth. It's another thing to figure out in the moment, how do I like bring that to fruition? How does that come out of me in a particular moment? And I just hope by the grace of God, like compassion and courage can be left, for them, and kind of how I'm carrying myself. But
That's awesome, man. Love it.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I think for me to answer that question, my son, he just turned 1 a couple weeks ago, so I can't really ask him what he's learned from me yet. From the looks of it, it's nothing really too good, Did
you cry a lot?
Yeah. Apparently, I cried a lot, and I get mad. So I have a 3-year-old daughter too, and the difference between boys and girls and all that. But my heart for my kids and and the men behind us is this thought of like I think there's a lot of condition. Sorry. And I just want my kids to know, like, there is no condition on any of the love. And I look at men today, man, and it's no different than it is in the Bible. And that's why I love that we're doing this about King David. Like, dude was a poet, was a warrior, had, a bunch of affairs. Like, dude, his life is a roller coaster, bro. Yeah. And that's what men are. And, we're not these perfect monoliths because we can't do it. Yeah. I grew up around men who try to do that, and they fall. Yeah. And so I think my legacy I would love to leave behind is like, you can be a poet, you can dance, you can do whatever, as long as you love God, and as long as you serve God, dude, you're set. And you don't have to fall into these masculine stereotypes. You can fall into these masculine stereotypes. All that matters is that you have a heart for God, and that you're willing, dude. Because it takes work, bro. I remember when my son came out, he had his cord wrapped around his neck, and he was all blue. And for the first time in years, I felt genuine fear. And ever since that moment, it's like, dude, the amount of work with this boy compared to his sister she's pretty chill. But with him, he can't even walk yet. And he's like, the amount of work. And that's what we need as men. We need to invest and we need to work. Because, watching him, watching my friends, watching all the other men around me, our natural bend is not to go towards God. It's to go towards something else. It's always worse. So, yeah, if any legacy I leave behind, it's, hard work and have a heart that, lusts after God's heart. Yeah. That's it, man.
Yeah. Man, I love that. Well, thanks for sharing that. And it's an honor to be able to hear from you guys. As being the young one, I feel like you guys are leaving the legacy for me right now. So thank you guys. And I think when I think of legacy, I think of my parents. And two things that I've watched them, even I went back home this last weekend, they displayed both of the qualities that I'm about to say so well. One of them is to not be afraid of being uncomfortable, to engage in the mess, to do what is hard. Mm-hmm. Right? My dad, he came to America. My mom came to America with literally nothing, and they worked so hard to leave me a legacy so that I could carry that and pass that on to my kids, right? So like just engaging in uncomfortable, work hard and like don't be scared to don't be scared to mess up and just keep trying. And the second one is that I want to pass on to even my kids that I've seen my parents displayed so well is generosity. Man, my parents have sacrificed so much for me in getting me through college and helping me through different things. They're so selfless with what they give, and that just makes me think of like, man, Jesus was so selfless with his care and his service to the nations, the people. Man, I want my kids to have a heart of generosity and a selfless service to other people. And I think that first starts from a lot of you guys said that, like your relationship with the Lord and being filled there first and letting it outpour as well too. So I would say the two things is generosity and not being afraid to be uncomfortable and going through the hard mess.
Yeah, thanks, Will. I appreciate you guys just joining with me in that. I love just even hearing from you, just the different things that we want to focus on, and yet they're all Christ-centered. They're all the attributes that Jesus displayed. And I just love having you guys to be able to bounce these things off of. It inspires me to work harder in that area, because as a dad, it's easy to find yourself being angry or focused on the wrong things, not the things that we ultimately want to leave. And so just to kind of reset and focus on those things. So, man, I appreciate you guys joining with me in that, joining in having some good food and just spending time together. Yeah. It's enjoyable. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Cheers.
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 Yeah. So all you guys, as you gather and eat whatever you're going to eat, hopefully your food's as awesome as ours. We want to encourage you to do what we just did. The question is simple. What do you want to leave to your sons and daughters or to those that you influence? What's your legacy? What do you want to pass down? And just share that with each other and encourage one another and take time to challenge each other to live this out. If you guys want to form accountability, if you want to form a group to make it more intentional, we want to encourage you to do that, because us being united together as men, doing this together, encouraging one another is so vital for us to actually live it out with our sons, daughters, and those who are younger in the faith. So thanks for participating with us. We love you guys, and we're praying for you.